last 47 years, he's been the guitarist for the classic British rockers Uriah Heep. Our guest today is Mick Box on the VVN Music Podcast. Hi, and welcome to episode 22 of the VVN Music Podcast. I'm Roger Wink, and our guest today is Mick Box, guitarist and the lone original member of Uriah Heep that is continuing to keep the band's legacy alive. Uriah Heep was formed in 1969 and, over the years, have released 24 studio albums, including 2015's Totally Driven. In September, BMG released the first 3 albums in a new reissue campaign that will see the band's first 17 albums released in new 2-CD sets, with a full disc worth of rarities from the vaults. Out already are the deluxe editions of their first 2 albums, Very Eavy, Very Umble, and Salisbury, along with a brand new anthology of their music, Your Turn to Remember. We talked to Mick from his home in England. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
No worries, mate. No worries.
Congratulations on the whole reissue program. How did that come about?
Basically, BMG got in touch with me and said that they were keen to do this, providing that I was driving it, and then we talked about it together, and it sounded like a really good idea because I think one of the stipulations was that on every CD, as much as we could, we'd put bonus tracks on that were mostly unheard tracks, and we found a guy called Rob Corridge, who I've known for many years, and he had tons of this stuff. So we trawled through it all, and it was quite good because every re-release, remaster we've got equal bonus tracks to the tracks on the album, which is great for the fans.
How did he get a hold of all of that material obviously he's a collector, but how did he manage to get a hold of it?
No, there's a story. There's a story. Years and years ago, our catalogue's been, bought out by many people. I think it started with PRT, got bought out by Sanctuary, got bought out by goodness knows who's. It's now with BMG. And along that journey, Rob Corridge, a guy, actually a New Zealander, he lives in England, and he was a big fan of the band. And he knew somebody in the record company, and they allowed him to go down into their cellars and pick stuff up. Otherwise, you just get destroyed or ruined, So he went down and picked loads of stuff up and got his hands on some ridiculous versions of stuff, which is great. And years ago, he played them to me. He said, can we do something with these? And I said, well, they're okay, but, at that time, my mindset was, if they were on the cutting room floor, they were on there for a reason. And that's why we chose the tracks we chose. So when the BMG idea came up, and I went, hang on, this could really work now, because we can use them in a very, very, constructive way, whereas we're not just re-releasing or remastering an album with nothing more in it than the album was in its first place, but we can put all these bonus tracks on, and the fans will love it. And so with that in mind, he came on board, he brought all the stuff that he had with him. He found them in many different ways. I'll give you an example. When producers and recording studios were being very fugal with their tape, what they used to do is record on one side and then turn it over and record on the other side. Well, on some of the tapes he had, there were some great versions of our songs on the other side of the tape. But lots of people wouldn't have known that, but he discovered it, and so it come from many ways. But thank goodness he got them all together, and we work very closely together, and we got them on the albums now, so it's great.
I'm sure as a collector he was very careful with all of those, but of course it's been 40 plus years since a lot of that was recorded, and he probably doesn't have, moisture controlled and so forth. Was there a lot of repair work that had to be done on the tapes to get sound quality up?
I think it was minimal repair, to be honest. He actually kept them in good. He's got his own little studio. I think he's got a studio in Miami and one in London. So he kept them in good condition. And they're the versions everyone's going to hear. It's fantastic.
What was your role as far as the restoration process goes?
I had nothing to do with the restoration, purely from the listening point of view. If something was screwed up at the end of a song or something, then it wouldn't have made it onto the album as a bonus track. But if it was a good version, it was a strong version, it was different enough, and it showed the development of the song to end up how it did end up, then that was my input.
Is there a lot of material that you ended up leaving behind?
There's a few things, yes. Yeah, where there might be something wrong with it, something out of tune, something musically wrong with it, in terms of it wouldn't have pleased anyone to listen to it. Mostly me. But there wasn't a lot at all, really. Actually, what we had on the first two albums basically was we had like 4 or 5 versions of each song, if you like, to choose from.
On the second disc of the album, Very Eavy, Very Umble, you have, I think it's 3 songs from pre-Uriah Heep as Spice. Did those also come from the same collection?
Yes, they were. They were in Sanctuary's vaults again. So he found them. Yeah, and being a big Heep fan, to find those old tracks as well was just immense. So he really did have a lot of archive old Heep stuff, which nobody else had heard or even had access to. But he was just lucky. He was allowed to go into those vaults and choose what he wanted. Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff out there that, the record companies went in, and this is especially with broadcast things, they've gone in and, have gone, gee, we could use that tape again, or we don't have the storage space to keep these things, and they get destroyed. So this was very lucky.
I think in the end, it was pretty much that, storage space, you take it away, we don't need it, we've got no need for it. And obviously nobody had any foresight other than an ardent fan, which was Rob Corridge, who gets credited on the albums for his input.
Did you have anything to do with writing on the new liner notes?
Yes, I wrote some of the liner notes and also got interviewed by John McIver, who also interviewed Ken Hensley, our old keyboard player. So it was good to get sort of those sort of difference of opinion on everything that happened back in those early days through the mist of time.
And listening to some of the alternate recordings and now looking back over time, is there anything there that you said, that might have been the better version to have put on that album? No,
I don't think we ever arrived at that, no, because I think we ended up with the right versions. The alternative versions, or the unheard of alternative versions, are usually there's an extra chorus in there that we may have taken out. It was the meat and potatoes, and then we trimmed it, if you like, trimmed the fat out of it, or we hadn't put harmonies on a particular part, but you could feel the development of the song, if you like.
You've put out 24 studio albums over the length of your career.
Yeah.
And the new anthology that came out only covers through 1989's Raging Silence. Is that where the reissue program is going to stop, or are you going to continue right up to like Totally Driven? To be quite honest, that's where BMG's involvement stops. They own up to that time, if you know what I mean. They own up to Raging Silence. Beyond that, we had other record companies. And not always the same record company, so it'd be very difficult to piece another one together, but it's not impossible. I assume that your plans are to put out Look at Yourself and Demons and Wizards next. Do you have any projected date on that?
No, that's down to BMG when we get everything together. I know they're doing some exciting covers to go with it. The Look at Yourself one looks immense. So we're still in the throes of doing that. So they haven't really discussed with you what pace they want to get everything out in? No, because 3 of them are released now. You have to have a break before the next batch come out, so that gives us time to formulate all the bonus tracks and make sure the artwork's correct, and et cetera, and probably more interviews are included in the text. I'm sure that over the years you've put out numerous collections of your older material, but the new one, Your Turn to Remember, seems to be one of the more comprehensive. How hard was it for you, and what process did you go through as far as picking the tracks to put on that album? Yeah, well, I had total control over that, so I just chose what I felt would flow correctly, and give the best calling card to the band, if you like. So, but I also pay attention, like I do in the set list, keys, one song in a key and another song in another key, where it lifts or it goes down, it creates a different mood, So, even something like changing, if there's a song in an A minor and the next song is in A, although it's not a big lift, but the mood change from a major to minor is quite a lift, So you subliminally go with it, and it takes you to another journey. So I went through all those sort of processes to make sure that all sat right. And certainly on the early albums, because that's where it needed that sort of care and attention.
That had to have been hard, though, because you did put the tracks on the album in chronological order, or at least in album chronological order, so you're a bit limited in what you can select as far as the next tracks go.
There's a limitation, but, I always bear that in mind, on creating the journey that you go through the lot, if you like.
Is there anything that you really wish you could have fit on there? I mean, those are pretty full discs you have.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, there's other tracks that were probably just as important, but you couldn't leave. You couldn't have an anthology without an Easy Living or a July Morning or a Gypsy, do you know what I mean? So your kind of hands are tied to a degree because those songs have to be on there. I mean, if you did a B version of it, then you'd choose more obscure tracks. That to me are just it's just as great, but but for listeners and fans, there's obvious tracks that they love to hear.
Where did you get your initial interest in playing guitar? I know I read that I guess it was your mother bought you one from a pawn shop.
Yeah, pawn shop. Yeah. I've still got it sitting on the wall now.
Wow.
In my office, yeah, it's fantastic. Well, initially I came in from the angle of jazz, to be honest. Django Reinhardt, Tal Farlow, Barney Kessel, and Les Paul Merrifield, and all that sort of area. That's where I sort of came in because I liked all the voicings of the chords and the techniques that we used, and they sort of grew into the sort of the Buddy Holly, Eddie Cochran sort of rock thing, and then they kind of grew out of that really.
It's amazing the number of people I've talked to who cite Les Paul, and you have people like Jeff Beck and
oh yeah, he was immense as a player, as an innovator, as not just in the guitar world but in the studio world. What he brought to the music business will go on from generations, from us, on and on and on.
What's truly amazing was the fact that, and I'm trying to remember exactly what the situation was, but that he was injured sometime in the 40s and had to relearn to play and actually never had full use of one of his hands, and yet he could do such amazing things on the guitar.
Are you talking about Les Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was amazing, but then look at Django Reinhardt, with the loss of fingers, and yet what he produced on the guitar was just absolutely amazing, mind-boggling. And
absolutely.
In fact, Jack Reinhardt was an inspiration to Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath when his fingers were chopped off in an accident. Yeah.
I also understand you're a guitar collector, but I read somewhere that you keep your collection kind of spread out all over the world, so you're never too far away from part of it. Is that true?
No, I've got a reasonable collection, but I'm not over a collector at all. I've just got some nice pieces that I enjoy. But yeah, in terms of the world thing, because of writing, I have an acoustic, and it's usually acoustics I leave everywhere. In America and in France and everywhere I go, I get an acoustic and leave it there. Australia. And so then when I'm over there, I haven't got to take guitar with me, and I can just pick it up and carry on writing.
You have residences in each of these places?
No. I used to live in America, in New Mexico. I used to live in Chicago. I used to live in Sydney, Australia. But I've got friends there. I have friends that look after it for me.
Even early on, when you had put together Spice, you had no interest really in playing covers, even though I'm sure that the club owners probably would have preferred it where you were playing. Did you get a lot of resistance to being a band that played mostly or all originals?
We did to a degree, and I'd lie to you if we didn't, because people don't want to hear Knock on Wood or The Midnight Hour or something that everyone else has played, But, we bucked against it, and in the end, people really warmed to what we were doing. And I mean, basically, we did a few of the cover songs, and would slip in one of our own. And when that goes unnoticed, you think, oh, hang on, we're onto something here. And so you put another extra one in, and suddenly, you're playing more of the originals than covers. And that's when you start thinking, hang on, we're onto something.
You mentioned your jazz influence and then the Chuck Berrys and so forth. So many British rock artists that I've talked to cite both blues and rhythm and blues as being a major influence. Is that the same with you?
And I was more of a jazzer rather than blues. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. People say to me, what blues players did you listen to when you were learning guitar? And I didn't listen to any. I was too happy to play the blues. I was a young man in a rock band traveling the world. I couldn't seriously play the blues with any the right feeling that it needed to be delivered. I was having too much fun.
You did mention Knock on Wood and so forth. Any R&B, though, the Stax?
Yeah, we touched on it. We used to try and find the obscure songs. I mean, if I'm trying to think back and dust down the cobwebs of my mind, and things like Little Piece of Leather, or we'd do Cherry Cherry by Neil Diamond. So it's any song that talked to us in that sort of way, we worked up. So they weren't necessarily the typical songs that most bands were doing. We'd spend times in the record shop finding tracks that were pretty obscure at times, but had the same feeling, that the others had.
Over the years, Uriah Heep has gone through a lot of personnel changes, but there was that core group in the 70s of you and David Byron and Ken Hensley.
Yeah.
How hard was it to move forward when David Byron was dismissed from the band?
But that was a terrible time in our career. But it's something that had to be done because David had pushed the limits to his alcohol consumption to a point where it was almost you couldn't work with him. He'd lost the plot. So yeah, very sad because David and I came through the. All the semi-pro days and, the amateur days, the whole thing, so, and he just lost his way with it, unfortunately, but, there's nothing we can really say about that now because he's not with us anymore, but, what he did leave us with was an amazing catalogue of songs and vocal performances that, you're hard to better at any time.
The other, what seems at least from everything I've read and understand, the other low point, of course, was when Ken Hensley left in 1980.
It wasn't so much a low point as David, because obviously we had a death to consider, to consider as well. But with Ken, it was just Ken kind of had an agenda, he would love to have had Uriah Heep as the Ken Hensley band, if you like. I think is the way of putting it. He always wanted to try his solo career, and he wanted to do it. And he found out that like most people in that position, they're very big and have a great say within the context of a band, but outside of it, the interest isn't quite there as much, and so it never took off for him.
You currently have, at least in the rock world, what I would consider a pretty firm lineup with Phil Lanzone and Bernie Shaw having been with you for, I guess, about 30 years now.
Since 1986.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of almost unheard of right now in the rock world.
It is, but, they came into the band and they've embraced it and they love it. And Uriah Heep's a good place to be. We're continually working. We do 100, 150 shows a year all over the world, 60 countries, We enjoy each other's company. We have a great time. There's good camaraderie there, and it's like a band of brothers, running all over the world. It's great fun.
And you have no interest at this point in slowing down at all?
Oh, no. We started the year in Japan, and we did a rock cruise from Fort Lauderdale to the Caribbean with, it was at Doobie Brothers, I can't remember who it is now, America, Foghat, loads of bands, Ace Frehley, and it was wonderful. The year before we did it with Alice Cooper and Doobie Brothers, sorry. So, yeah, we did that, and then we've traveled right through Europe, playing shows, and we've just come back from Bolivia playing in La Paz and Potosi out there, which is immense. Being in South America, the audience are absolutely mental out there. It's great. And we just come back from Ireland, and then on this Wednesday we do a whole tour through Germany, going to Poland, going to Holland, and then we come back for Christmas and the New Year's Eve. We're playing a show in Romania, and then we start again. We just carry on and on. It's what we do best.
Any idea, even ballpark, how many shows you've played over the years?
No, but it's probably up on our website by some fan somewhere. I tend not to count them, I'm just pleased they're still going on by.
What keeps you going? I mean, is it the love of the music? I'm sure you've seen just about every place in the world you've ever wanted to see by now.
Yeah, it's having the same passion and energy you've always had for your music, and playing guitar is and that's the buzz, and that's your driving force, And as long as we've got our health, we'll be out there playing shows, because it's just what we love to do.
Is there anything in particular, since you mentioned health, is there anything that you do to keep yourself healthy and ready to be out on the road that length of time?
I think it's in our DNA to be out on the road, to be honest. I think it's as simple as that. Yeah, I mean, you can't be too mad. You can't go too mad on anything. Moderation's a great word if you can use it. But, we tend to be very professional about what we do. We treat it in a very professional way, and we enjoy it immensely. So we're not going to let anything else mess it up.
So you've got all of the touring coming up. You've got the reissue series coming. What about new material and a new album? Yeah,
we're writing a new album at the moment. Phil Lands and myself are the main writers, and we're writing that at the moment, and we're probably about a third of the way through. And then we'll look at finishing the writing by the end of Jan or something, and then we'll be looking at finding a space in our touring calendar to go and record a new album. It's just something we have to do.
Our thanks to Mick Box for talking with us. The new Uriah Heep anthology, Your Turn to Remember, and the deluxe versions of their first two albums are available now. We'll be back soon with more editions of the VVN Music Podcast. Remember that you can hear the VVN Music Podcast via iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and the VVN Music website. For the latest news on the veteran artists of rock, pop, soul, country, folk, and blues, go to vvnmusic.com. If you have any comments or questions about the website or this podcast, please send them to vvnnetwork@gmail.com. Our theme music is performed by Yahar. This program was recorded on November 14th, 2016, and is a production of the VVN Network, copyright 2016.